Welcome back to the channel where we uncover the untold stories behind Hollywood legends. Today we are talking about Jane Fonda, a woman who was never just a movie star, but a mirror reflecting America's beauty, contradictions, anger, and conscience. For more than 6 decades, Jane Fonda was born into privilege as the daughter of Henry Fonda, one of the most respected actors in Hollywood history. Yet from the very beginning, she lived in the shadow of a father who was emotionally distant and a family marked by silence, tragedy, and unspoken pain. Her mother, Frances Ford Seymour, died by suicide when Jane was just 12 years old, a trauma that would quietly shape her entire life. Though few people spoke about it at the time, Hollywood preferred smiling daughters and perfect families, not broken ones. Jane grew up believing she had to earn love through perfection, through achievement, through beauty, and through applause. She trained as an actress under Lee Strasberg at the Actors Studio, learning not just how to perform, but how to bleed emotionally on screen. In the 1960s, she became a star almost overnight. Tall, athletic, intelligent, and stunning in a way that felt modern. Her early roles often emphasized glamour and sex appeal, but behind the camera, she felt deeply unfulfilled. She once admitted that she didn't even know who she was in those years. She was playing roles both on screen and in real life, trying to become the woman she thought others wanted her to be. Everything changed in the late 1960s and early 1970s when America itself began to fracture. The Vietnam War, civil rights protests, assassinations, and generational anger reshaped the country. Jane Fonda did something few Hollywood stars dared to do. She took a side. She became politically active, loudly and visibly. She protested the war, spoke out against U.S. military actions, and aligned herself with anti-war activists. In 1972, she traveled to North Vietnam, an act that would define her. Public image for decades. Photographs of her sitting on an anti-aircraft gun shocked America. For many, she became Hanoi Jane, a symbol of betrayal. Men who had fought in Vietnam felt personally wounded. Politicians condemned her. Hollywood distanced itself. Death threats followed her for years. Yet, Jane later said she did not feel brave at the time. She felt morally compelled. She also admitted that the trip was one of the most painful mistakes of her life, not because she opposed the war, but because she failed to understand how deeply the images would hurt veterans. That nuance was lost in the outrage, and the nickname followed her forever. Despite the backlash, Jane Fonda did not disappear. Instead, she did something remarkable. She became one of the greatest actresses of her generation. In the 1970s, she delivered a series of performances that transformed her from a sex symbol into a serious artist. Films like Clute and Coming Home earned her 2 Academy Awards. Her characters were complex, wounded, searching, often mirroring her own internal struggles, especially in Coming Home, where she portrayed a woman awakening politically and emotionally during the Vietnam era. The irony was impossible to ignore. The very war that made her a pariah also gave her one of her most powerful roles. Off-screen, her personal life was equally turbulent. Her marriages, first to French director Roger Vadim, then to activist Tom Hayden, and later to media mogul Ted Turner, reflected her evolving identity. With Hayden, she immersed herself in political activism, feminism, and social justice. But the marriage was marked by distance and competing priorities. She later admitted that she often lost herself in her relationships, molding herself to the men she loved, something she would only fully understand much later in life. In the 1980s, Jane Fonda reinvented herself again, this time in a way that stunned both fans and critics. She launched Jane Fonda's Workout, a home exercise video that became a global phenomenon, selling millions of copies and turning her into a symbol of discipline, health, and reinvention. To some, it seemed like a betrayal of her political past. To others, it was a brilliant act of survival. The truth was simpler. She needed financial independence. She wanted control over her life, and she understood the power of media better than almost anyone. The workout empire funded her activism, her production company, and her freedom. Yet even at the height of her fitness fame, she struggled privately with eating disorders, body image issues, and self-worth. She later spoke openly about bulimia and decades of self-loathing, admitting that fame did not protect her from insecurity. As she aged, Jane Fonda did something Hollywood rarely allows women to do. She refused to disappear. She embraced aging publicly, speaking about menopause, surgery, regret, and acceptance in a culture obsessed with youth. She acknowledged having plastic surgery, but rejected shame, insisting that honesty mattered more than perfection. In her 70s and 80s, she returned to acting with renewed energy, appearing in films and series that presented older women as complex, sexual, intelligent, and powerful. Shows like Grace and Frankie introduced her to an entirely new generation, while reaffirming her relevance to older audiences. Politically, she never softened. In her later years, she was arrested multiple times during climate change protests, standing in Washington, D.C. demanding accountability, even as critics once again called her radical. She responded with calm certainty, saying that silence was no longer an option. What makes Jane Fonda fascinating is not that she was always right, but that she was always willing to evolve, to admit mistakes, to apologize when necessary, and to continue acting according to her conscience. In interviews, she often reflects on the idea that her life only truly began after 50, that wisdom came from failure, that self-knowledge was earned through pain. She has spoken movingly about forgiving her father, about understanding her mother's illness, and about finally becoming at peace with herself. Her story is not one of perfection, but persistence. Not of universal approval, but personal integrity. For men who grew up watching classic Hollywood, Jane Fonda represents something rare. A woman who lived through the Golden Age, the counterculture revolution, the corporate 1980s, and the digital era without losing her voice. She challenged power, paid the price, rebuilt herself, and refused to be erased. Love her or hate her, Jane Fonda forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about patriotism, conscience, aging, and courage. And perhaps that is her greatest legacy. Not the awards, not the scandals, but the fact that she never stopped asking who she really was, and never stopped becoming that woman, even when the world told her to be quiet. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, consider subscribing for more journeys into the quiet, complicated lives behind cinema's brightest lights.